Apple. A company that built its reputation on one thing, turning existing ideas into polished revolutions. The iPod wasn't the first MP3 player, but it redefined music. The iPhone wasn't the first smartphone, but it changed everything about mobile computing. Even the Apple Watch entered late, and yet it became the standard. But lately, something feels broken. Apple's software, once its crown jewel, is slipping. Once celebrated for stability and refinement, it's now riddled with bugs, glitches, and confusing design decisions. And nothing exposed this more than Apple's biggest gamble in years, Apple Intelligence, their grand entry into the AI race. Announced in June 2024 as Apple's bold vision of the future, it was marketed as the next great revolution. But a year later, much of it was still missing, still coming soon, while rivals Google, Microsoft, and Samsung sprinted far ahead.
Now the year is 2025, and between missed deadlines and deleted commercials, it seems like even they are having some troubles with an emerging technology, and it is fascinating to watch.
What was promised as the future turned into lawsuits, staged demos, chaos inside Apple's AI division, and growing doubts about the company's very identity. This is the story of how Apple, the world's most valuable company, fumbled the single biggest technological shift of our time: generative AI.
Introducing Apple Intelligence, the new personal intelligence system that makes your most personal products even more useful and delightful.
When Apple introduced Apple Intelligence, the hype was enormous. It wasn't just another software update. It was supposed to be Apple's bold declaration that they too were ready for the AI age. Except it wasn't. Months passed and those features simply didn't exist. Consumers who bought the iPhone 16 based on those promises were furious. By 2025, multiple class action lawsuits accused Apple of false advertising, claiming that Apple knowingly misled the public. The lawsuit stated, quote, Apple's advertisements cultivated a clear and reasonable consumer expectation that these transformative features would be available upon the iPhone's release. Contrary to the company's claims of advanced AI capabilities, the products offered a significantly limited, or entirely absent, version of Apple Intelligence, misleading consumers about its actual utility and performance. In other words, Apple sold a dream that wasn't real. And in many cases, that's not just a bad look, it's illegal. But this was just the beginning. A report from The Information revealed a damning truth. Many of Apple's most impressive AI demonstrations at WWDC had been staged. Take one of the keynote's most dramatic moments: Siri pulling flight details from your email, checking your calendar, scanning messages for lunch plans, and automatically mapping a route. It looked seamless. It looked futuristic. It looked like Apple at its best. Except it wasn't real. Engineers later admitted that scenario never actually ran on any build of Apple Intelligence. The only part of that demo that really worked was the glowing ribbon animation around the edge of the screen. Everything else was smoke and mirrors. Even Craig Federighi, Apple's own senior vice president of software, was reportedly shocked when he tried a pre-release build on his own phone. It couldn't do half of what was already promised to millions of users. This was not the Apple the world remembered.
Some real software we were able to demonstrate there and show what was coming, but it didn't converge in the way, quality-wise, that we needed it to.
Historically, Apple has always played the long game. They weren't first, but when they finally stepped in, they perfected the product. The iPhone wasn't the first touchscreen device, but it made multi-touch feel magical. The Apple Watch wasn't the first wearable, but it became the standard for fitness tracking. Apple's magic was simple: let others stumble, then swoop in with polish. But when it came to generative AI, that strategy failed spectacularly. While Google was caught off guard by ChatGPT's sudden rise in 2022, it recovered quickly. By 2023, Google had Bard, then Gemini Live, powerful tools integrated directly into Android, Gmail, Maps, YouTube, and the wider web. Microsoft jumped in early, embedding OpenAI's technology across Windows, Office, and Azure. Samsung added real-time call translation and advanced image tools to its Galaxy devices. Meanwhile, Apple stayed silent. And when it finally spoke up with Apple Intelligence, It showed up late, underprepared, and borrowing from competitors like OpenAI. For once, Apple didn't redefine the category. It struggled to even keep up. Nothing highlighted Apple's AI crisis more than Siri. When Siri first launched in 2011, it looked like the future. A voice assistant on your phone?
We have a flat tire.
How do I tie a bow tie again?
What's the fastest way to Hartford Hospital?
Do I need an umbrella in New York this weekend?
Remind me to call Chris when I get home.
Move my meeting from 3 to 4?
What does a weasel look like?
It felt revolutionary. But over the years, Siri stagnated. By 2025, it wasn't just underwhelming, it was embarrassing. Ask it anything remotely complex, and you'd get canned responses, irrelevant web searches, or outright errors. Meanwhile, Google's Gemini Live was demonstrating conversations that flowed naturally.
Hey Gemini, is winter cooler in a humid country or is it cooler in a dry country?
Generally, a dry country will experience cooler overnight winter temperatures than a humid country.
You could interrupt it mid-sentence, ask follow-ups, switch from typing to voice seamlessly, even use the camera to ask questions about your surroundings in real time.
Those are cirrus clouds. They often appear before a change in the weather.
Samsung's Galaxy AI wasn't far behind, offering features like instant call translation and advanced photo editing. And Siri? Still unreliable for setting a reminder. It wasn't just a technological gap, it was a symbol of Apple's deeper problem. Behind the scenes, Apple's AI division was in disarray. Engineers described a culture of mistrust, infighting, and endless delays. Talented developers walked out, bosses were fired, teams fragmented. At one point, Apple even had 2 competing AI divisions inside the company, duplicating work, fighting over resources, and refusing to collaborate. One group, led by John Giannandrea, Apple's head of AI, pushed forward with Siri improvements. Another, under Craig Federighi, quietly built its own rival AI unit. The rivalry was so intense that engineers nicknamed Giannandrea's division Aimless. The result? Years of wasted time, squandered talent, and missed opportunities. To understand how Apple got here, we have to rewind. Siri wasn't even Apple's idea. It was a startup app that Apple acquired in 2010 for $200 million. Steve Jobs had ambitious plans, but he passed away just as Siri launched. From then on, Siri drifted. Richard Williamson, one of the early executives put in charge, clashed with engineers and limited upgrades to once per year. By 2012, Apple faced the infamous Maps fiasco, warped buildings, missing landmarks, and nonsensical directions.
The world is a crazy place, especially if you're using the new Apple Maps application. Bridges look like roller coasters. Football stadiums have disappeared, but the bigger fail is addresses that are simply wrong.
The fallout was brutal. Williamson was fired, Siri stalled, and competitors surged ahead. By the mid-2000s, Amazon's Alexa and Google Assistant were dominating the market. Apple had the head start, but it let the future slip away. In 2018, Apple made what looked like a game-changing move. It hired John Giannandrea, the man who had led Google's AI efforts. On paper, it was brilliant. In practice, it was slow, bureaucratic, and riddled with poor priorities. Under Giannandrea, it took Apple 2 years just to remove the word "Hey" from Hey Siri. Meanwhile, rivals were releasing conversational AI that felt alive. Some engineers tried to build empathy layers into Siri, but were told to stop. Others secretly worked behind the scenes with different teams, frustrated at the lack of vision. Even Apple's chip budget for AI was slashed, leaving engineers begging outside providers for GPU access. The world thought Apple was too secretive to fail. But inside, the cracks were widening. Then came November 2022. OpenAI released ChatGPT, and the world changed. For most of Silicon Valley, it was a wake-up call. For Apple, it was more like a rude shock. Giannandrea reportedly dismissed it as overhyped. He insisted large language models had limited utility. History would prove him wrong. While OpenAI's models exploded in popularity, Apple's teams were still stuck in debates, building internal tools that couldn't keep up. By 2023, it was obvious. Apple had missed the AI wave. By 2024, morale inside Apple's AI group collapsed. Engineers described being kept in the dark, told to keep building features without clear direction, deadlines, or guarantees that anything would actually ship. Apple Intelligence became a moving target, always promised, rarely delivered. And when WWDC 2024 arrived, the grand reveal was met with skepticism. By 2025, lawsuits followed, trust eroded, and Apple's reputation as the company of polished execution was in question. In March 2025, Bloomberg reported that Tim Cook had lost confidence in Gianandrea. Apple stripped him and Deputy Robbie Walker of control over Siri, replacing them with Mike Rockwell, the executive who had successfully delivered Vision Pro.
John Gianandrea, Senior Vice President of AI at Apple, he's losing responsibility over Siri. Siri is now going to be taken over by Mike Rockwell.
This was a turning point. Rockwell was known for executing complex projects. If anyone could salvage Apple's AI efforts, it was him. But by then, the damage was already done. The deeper issue wasn't just about leadership. It was cultural. Apple built its empire on secrecy, simplicity, and control. AI doesn't work like that. Generative AI thrives on iteration, on public testing, on fast, messy experimentation. You can't build AI behind closed doors and then unveil it fully polished, Steve Jobs style. The technology simply doesn't evolve that way. Apple never adapted, and the result was a company trapped in its own outdated playbook. So, where does Apple go from here? At WWDC 2025, Apple once again promised that Apple Intelligence was coming soon, with features like personal context, on-screen awareness, and tighter app integration. But this time, executives refused to commit to deadlines. The skepticism was palpable. Apple also unveiled a massive design overhaul across iOS, macOS, iPadOS, watchOS, and tvOS, a glossy, visionOS-inspired aesthetic. Some observers saw it as a distraction, a shiny new coat of paint to draw attention away from Apple's AI failures. But the bigger question remains: is Apple's decline in AI just a temporary stumble, or a sign that the company is losing its legendary touch? Apple has always been more than a tech company. It's been a cultural icon, shaping music, phones, computers, and even the way we interact with technology itself. But the rise of AI has exposed its vulnerabilities. While rivals rushed ahead, Apple hesitated. While others embraced iteration, Apple clung to secrecy. The world is now asking, is Apple still the leader of innovation, or is it falling behind? One thing is certain, the AI revolution won't wait. And if Apple can't catch up, the company that once set the standard for the future may find itself chasing it instead. This is Mindtrace 360. Don't forget to jump into the comments and share your thoughts. We love hearing from curious minds like you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.